Afternoon, everyone. From Cambridge, I'm Julian Clover, one of the editors of Broadband TV News, and I'd like to welcome you to the session, Are Telcos Losing Interest in TV, which we will discuss over the next hour or so. The genesis of this conversation came about in late April when BT, in the news today, of course, confirmed it was considering options for BT Sport, which is often a euphemism for let's pop up the for sale signs, everybody. A few weeks later, it then was confirmed that Air Sports across the water in Ireland would also go dark. We'd earlier said they weren't going to be investing anymore in sports rights. And then, as we were setting it all up, before the ink was even dry on the website, we had AT&T's agreement with Discovery over the future of Warner Media. And of course, as I mentioned a few moments ago, the Altice or Patrick Drahi buy-in to BT hasn't particularly escaped our notice either. So in our last media meet and greet before the summer break, we're going to discuss all of that. To do so, I have a panel who you can see as well. Cyrus Mewawalla, Thematic Research, GlobalData. We have Anette Schaefer, analyst with Big Picture, and David Short, the media technologist with Malkani Systems. And I'm Julian Clover from Broadband TV News. Have some questions from you later as well. If you find the appropriate box on your screen, you can type those in. And once we've completed the main part of the discussion, we will hopefully extend that a little further with some of your views and questions to the panel. So let's get underway, and I'm going to start, Annette, with you, because you've worked in a number of telcos, Deutsche Telekom, I guess, most foremost in our minds. Do you think that AT&T's retreat from Warner Media is kind of an admission that can't really do content, whatever the assets might be, or is it simply part of a big media mergers trend?
It's a trend per se, because I think telcos and also cable companies to a certain extent are always a little bit challenged by managing content, media, and understanding user behavior around it and what resonates with audience with that. It was usually part of an access business, right? So a value-added service to an access business. And I think overall, we need to understand what's currently happening around the availability of content. So a lot of the studios go on direct. So a lot of the attractive assets are becoming independently available to the consumer, so to speak. And the question is what role you, as a telco, you can play in this value chain in the future. And I think that's some of the trends that we currently seeing.
David, this has gone back quite a while, really, hasn't it? The excitement for the telcos of getting a little bit into show business, and we'll discuss some of that as we go through our time together. But what's your take on Warner Media, though? Is it, as Annette was suggesting there, part of a fattening up the turkey for Christmas, or is there something more to it?
Well, two things that are interesting. One is that they sold it for significantly less than they paid for it. Yeah. And that sort of would suggest that they didn't really understand what they had and were able to manage it in an effective way.
Perhaps a turkey of another sort.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it brought to mind, the whole Cisco NDS thing, where you've essentially got a player from outside, our little corner of the industry. And you had the feeling that Cisco didn't really know what they'd bought with NDS, and I don't think any figures were ever published. But again, one's led to believe they took a very big loss when they sold it back to the original management.
And they'd added extra bits as well, hadn't they?
Well, indeed. Well, yes, of course, because the old scientific Atlanta, they got scientific Atlanta with it. Yeah. So I think, and this is something we discussed, obviously, when we had the preparation session for this, that the feeling is that there's a cultural mismatch between telco and TV, and what looks good on a PowerPoint slide about integrating organisations, it just doesn't work on the ground. So I think there's a bit of that. I think.
But I wonder that the point, and it was an interesting one that you made about NDS, of course, Cinemedia is the company which they've become. But I wonder, if this is a larger grass is greener syndrome, which probably happens in industries it might happen in the plumbing industry for all I know, where simply one company looks at another, say, well, we don't have that skill, let's go and buy them, and then we discover, or they discover, that actually the manufacture of hot taps is doing quite nicely on its own, and actually it doesn't need to join another company which does hot and cold and lukewarm water.
Yeah, I think there is a syndrome, isn't there, where if a company is doing a good job, from the outside they make it look simple, and so the temptation is, if you're an outsider, is think, well, I could do that. That looks easy. But of course, it's the duck syndrome, where the duck is it ducks? They look elegant when they go along the water, but they're flapping madly underneath. And then you have to manage the duck, and you find out that you haven't got the skills. Unless you can be a really hands-off management team, the danger is that you start undermining some of the value that's in your acquisition.
And you think on the AT&T Warner Media point, it's interesting that whilst of the combined company, whilst AT&T will be the larger shareholder, I think it's roughly 2/3 to AT&T and the third to Discovery. It's actually Discovery who, at least at the very top of the tree, who are going to be running the show, and that does seem to be quite an acknowledgement that, well, actually, maybe these content people should run the content themselves.
Yeah. And we've got a comment from Christine in the audience who's making the point about Comcast and NBCU. And I think arguably that's the exception that proves the rule, that when you're working at a very big scale, I think that helps. And I always have the impression that NBC is managed at a distance from the Comcast corporate management.
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's certainly been a number of personnel swaps between Sky and Comcast, the operator, and back again. That might be something we can explore later on. I think Christine makes a good point there. Cyrus, you get to look at lots of these sort of big deals going on. What did you make, first of all, of the Warner Media AT&T retreat?
Yeah, so
they're still in the company, of course.
I'm a tech analyst by training, so I might have a slight bias towards tech. But the way I see it is the Warner Media Discovery merger. It's about 130 billion. It's one of the biggest M&A deals this year, and it comes just behind the Amazon MGN deal. And if you take a step back and look at this, I think this is an inflection point for the whole global TV sector. If you look at it from the point, there's three big players attacking TV. There's the TV broadcasters, who are the incumbents. There's big tech, and there's the telcos. And really, the telcos, in the form of ITV, have only got about 6% of this market. Big tech, by our calculations, has about 15%. And the other 85%, is all to play. So I think TV broadcaster, the AT&T hive-off has shown that people are scared of big tech. I mean, Amazon's worth 1.7 trillion, Apple's worth 2.2 trillion. The biggest media company is Disney, and that's 300 billion. The biggest telco is about 250 billion. So in terms of cash, they find it hard to compete. And M&A is the area where we see a lot more activity, especially with content providers merging, and hopefully with telcos creating strategic partnerships and consortia that help defend against big tech. But telcos need to take a side. Are they going to side with content, or are they going to side with big tech?
Just on the BT announcement this morning, and Altice or Patrick Drahi just pipping the previous largest shareholder to be top dog, as it were. And I must confess, I'd sort of forgotten that Deutsche Telekom was even a shareholder in BT. It just doesn't get mentioned, you know. It's I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that well, that they might, but the concept of a board meeting where the Altice representative is sitting next to the Deutsche Telekom representative and simply saying, "Oh, they've done well this month, haven't they? They've been increasing the old fibre broadband rollout." I just find it hard to believe that at some point there's not going to be some kind of traction, not necessarily a change in direction, because obviously so many operators are looking towards fibre broadband. But I just, even if it's in presentation.
But it goes back to Cyrus' point. I mean, in the moment, the most telcos, if the integrated telcos, have two big challenges. They have to build out 5G and fiber. And I think that infrastructure at the moment is much more high on the agenda than thinking about what kind of role they want to play in the content business, or what kind of proposition they want to build with high tech or against tech, right? So I think that TV is less important right now from the agenda setting.
I also think this is more of an investment opportunity than a kind of an operational decision, really. BT shares are cheap. They're cheap for a number of reasons. They've got a big pension problem, underfunding problem. They're just coming out from an accounting scandal from Italy and from others, and they've not done that successfully in TV, and so it's a good investment opportunity as opposed to anything else. And this is a good businessman we're talking about.
Yeah, and obviously we'll obviously come to talk about BT and some of the others content adventures shortly. The one other sort of big merger or play, the RTL TF1 play, which is going on at the moment. That's another one which basically demonstrates that such big mergers and share swaps aren't just restricted to the United States. They're happening right on our doorstep as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we'll see a lot more M&A activity in the TV broadcasting sector. I think in the US you've got AMC Networks and Lionsgate. They may be up for sale. Sony, just a few weeks ago, their CEO said, "We are definitely not for sale, our Sony Music business." But I think things are changing so fast that they may change their mind. In the UK, you've got ITV. Across Europe, you've got loads of companies that are going to be forced to merge because they're facing a giant competitor in the form of big tech that's willing to pay billions of dollars for content that these people are unable to.
So would you say then, Cyrus, that the kind of merger being discussed between TF1 and RTL is actually a reaction to Apple, to Disney Plus, to Netflix, of course, and the others as well?
Without question. Each side has two great assets. The content providers have the content, and the tech providers have the platforms. And as a tech analyst, to me, it's blindingly obvious who's going to win unless something changes. The user interface and the tech platform is everything these days. The network effect is everything. And whereas telcos and media companies in the past, they might have been able to bundle things, so triple play bundles or whatever, the tech companies, they don't really need that because they can bundle it in a different way. Amazon Prime gives you free delivery. Netflix gives you a much better user interface, and also as things progress, technology is going to become more important. So Netflix, Amazon, Apple, they're going to use artificial intelligence. They're going to change the EPG, the electronic program guides, beyond recognition. And telcos and media companies, they're going to have to keep up with things like conversational platforms, voice-controlled TV, if they're going to have any chance whatsoever at competing.
Yeah, and I think I think there are two forces there. On the one hand, all those things you mentioned, Cyrus, they require scale to do them properly, and the big techs, the FANGs, have the scale to do this. So it makes sense for I'd be careful what words I use, but the smaller players, shall I say smaller players, makes sense for them to amalgamate at least so they've got some chance to play against that scale. The other thing, of course, with bundling is that, on the triple play, the origins of the triple play probably started when you had to send the same installer to install your phone line and your set-top box, and so there was an amortization of cost across because of the physical delivery mechanisms. But now that's gone. I mean that you don't.
You're just sending through the post these days. Expect to do it yourself most of the time.
Indeed. So I think there are two. It's interesting. I mean, just in the chat, a couple of comments. One from Lemart, which I really like this comment because he's saying actually, I think the money still ends up in the hands of production companies, which is sort of, in my view, the heart of the creative heart of the TV business. So whichever route it follows, they're still creating great content. And Graham Leith is pointing out also Virgin Media O2 merger, which again, it's slightly outside my scope because you've got essentially, it's mobile, but I think probably a lot of the same principles apply.
But it's interesting though. It just follows in the footsteps of Liberty Global, of course, parent company of Virgin Media, and they've made friends with Vodafone, both in the Dutch and of course in the German market. As made friends with the Dutch market, and Vodafone already a player in the German market with the I guess the bulk of the old Kabel Deutschland assets there. So it's I guess that one follows it's a trend of its own, really, isn't it? In particular. I'd like, before we move on, to maybe we might need to do a few definitions here, because I realise that IPTV seemed to be something that we always used to be talking about, and it was one of these terms that got mangled a little bit over the years. So David, when we talk about IPTV, we're looking, I think, at a managed service where you've probably got a box attached to it, basically, at some point.
Yeah, I suppose. I would say it's a managed service. So if your IPTV goes wrong, there's someone you can phone up and say, "Why is my IPTV not working?" And it's typically your ISP, because they manage the set-top box, they manage the network, they manage the playout. If my Netflix stops working, it's a bit harder to know who to phone, because it could it could be my Wi-Fi router, it could be my ISP, or it could be Netflix. So that's probably so Netflix. So IPTV is a managed service that's delivered by one company to the customer. Streaming or over-the-top streaming is an unmanaged service.
Yeah, and it starts to get confusing, of course, when you talk about something like Disney Plus or Netflix, because you can stream them over your phone, you can stream them over the internet, and there they are in the set-top box, sat there alongside BBC One or Sat.1 or whoever your favourite local channel happens to be, and then cable, because there is this sort of I always remember when the telcos started getting into the delivery of content. I always kind of thought that if you described a telco service to a consumer, they'd tell you it was cable back again, because it's almost the technical delivery of how it gets to you, just rather than what's on it. Although I guess, Annette, it was the telcos who really sparked the interest in VOD type services.
Yeah, and they sparked, but also I think at Comcast, one of the first one in the late 90s who trialed VOD, and it was video on demand. It was started every 15 minutes. So, I mean, the cable codes started out on VOD in the same time, and then IPTV came around, and it came really into play in 2004-05. And then they started with linear and mostly, and then added up video on demand. But I think still the role of the telcos and the cable companies is a little bit different. I think that the cable companies never really embraced so much going into original content and production, and rather in a good channel lineup. In most of the European markets, they're depending on housing associations, so they have a different market to play in.
So you think it always was? I guess many of them benefited from incumbent deals where it had been a state-owned monopoly in many territories, which is something I guess here in the UK BT didn't really go through. I appreciate it was involved with cable in the early days, but generally speaking, that's something that you find in what we used to call continental Europe, where an incumbent was, basically, trace it back far enough and it's the post office.
Yeah, yeah.
There are comparisons. It's interesting. You bring up an interesting thing of the cable companies not really getting involved in content. And I remember years ago, I think it was still National Transcommunications Limited, NTL, had a bit of a dalliance with the Premier League, but before they could get things going, I think they got into Chapter 11 or something similar at the time. So that was a content deal which was well and truly scuppered.
Yeah, there was a time, wasn't there, in the late noughties where ITV were on the verge of doing a big deal with Virgin Media, and then that was scuppered by James Murdoch.
Yes, indeed.
Who was at Sky at the time.
Yes, it is interesting how these mergers sort of come and go. But I'm wondering though if you have the cable companies who were, as we say, historically involved in the pipe business, because that's kind of what they were set up to do with the housing associations. When the telcos came along and wanted to shout about the fact that they had a television service, the easy way to do it would be to buy some top-rate content, which
that's what they did.
The answer isn't always football, but quite often it is.
That's what they did, and I think that's also that was a big challenge. I mean, to acquire these Disneys and the studio content, and you paid probably premium for that, and to differentiate, you even acquired exclusive content for your market. I mean, I think every telco tried. Telefonica started that very early on in acquiring content for the group and to differentiate. And I think that's the question now: what will happen with these kind of exclusive rights, especially in sports? Who will take them in the future, and who will license them in the future?
Do you think that the people like Telefonica can be described as a success story in the way they handled content early on?
I think early on they were quite successful because they were the first to market and the sheer size of the group, because they're not only for Spain but also for Latin American markets, right? They had a company called Telefonica Contenidos. They were the licensing for the entire group. But the addressable market, I think that really justified the investment. But I think if you look at smaller markets, it's quite difficult to see a return of investment when you're subscribing or you're licensing a local Premier League or Deutsche Bundesliga or one of the soccer leagues.
Does it help to be, as I'm thinking of maybe some of the Eastern European, Central and Eastern European operations of Deutsche Telekom, does it help to be a player who is backed by a big company, be it Deutsche Telekom or somebody else who maybe has the buying power and can give a significant push to a smaller company which wouldn't be able to have if it was just a local player?
I think there's two ways to look at it. Sure, it helps.
What was it?
Of the addressable market, but also I think it's also the how you've been entrenched with the local community. I think if a Greek operator or a Romanian operator or whoever acquires the local soccer rights, that also shows that you want to bring something to the audience that really they care about, right? So it also shows how you would be entrenched in that community or in that society. And I think it's always a viable option to think about it as local content and exclusive local content.
So I guess, and that's one of the things where, BT, the good example with their acquisition of Premier League rights, although of course the previous two players who had the package which didn't belong to Sky in the UK market, Setanta Sports, right, and were followed by ESPN, who sort of pulled out of the UK market through before the brand taken over by BT, although obviously with Disney coming back in, who knows what's going to happen there. Cyrus, I'm wondering, is this content thing, is it as much about the investment of it as and somebody doing the calculation within the telco and saying, right, well, if we get all this exclusive content, it's going to make a name for us and it will pay back. And the question is, how does it pay back soon enough?
Yeah, I think when telcos, especially in Europe, went into TV, it was essentially a local business. So they had local content like the UK Premier League and that kind of stuff. But now they're competing with Netflix and Amazon. This is a global market, and they're competing with much bigger budgets. So Amazon's content budget is 11 billion in 2020, up from 8 billion in 2019. Warner and Discovery together, they probably spend 19 billion this year. Disney 15 billion. So it's very hard. There's very few telcos that can buy content on that scale. And in terms of their business model, the technology of IPTV is very strong. As David said, it's a managed service. The quality standards are high, but the business side of that is very weak. After 15 years, they've only got 6% of the TV market. That's not very successful. And part of it is because IPTV services need a lot more content. The question is, telcos have never been willing to spend billions of dollars on anything in the way that tech companies do.
There is, I think, there's a technique which I've often seen used by broadcasters, and that's basically you have half a dozen, products. It might be, say, like you've got the Premier League, you've got some rugby, and you've made yourself 3 really good dramas. What you don't tell anybody is they're the only dramas you've actually made, and these are all shown on the posters absolutely everywhere. And as a result of which, think, wow, they've got all of this content, but the reality is a little bit different.
Yeah, but good back to Cyrus' point is also what is the reason or the rationale behind going into the content business? Sure, it's filling the broadband, but in the end of the day, it's shielding or protecting your access revenues, right? So broadband, and you can upsell higher bandwidth over that. So it's not a business on its own right, and I think that's the differences between, say, studio or now also for the tech companies. Where tech companies maybe understood better is that, especially producing content, has its own rights and rules, and as you just said, you buy 10 assets, maybe 3 stick, and the rest will disappear in catalog B, C, and D. But I think that the telcos never really invested into getting that knowledge or acquiring that knowledge or being in that business. So it's more about like a value-added service that you providing to your customers.
Yeah, one of the motivations for the old triple play was not the only motivation, but one of the motivations was to try and make the proposition sticky. So because obviously, I don't know if I hope I'm not preempting the question about successful telcos, but if basically telcos are in a game of trying to make sure that their incoming churn is ever so slightly higher than their outgoing churn. So if you can, obviously you're trying to, you're doing marketing and spending people offers to try and make them switch, but on the other hand, you're trying to stop people going out the door. And if you can say, I've got this really good content here, or you can't move your email address, because if you switch service, then you just give people that little disincentive to churn out. And of course, the problem with content now is if the content's good enough, the regulator will force you to give it to your rival anyway. So I suspect content is more about like a marketing, something to stick your marketing on. So BT can talk about, for example, the Premier League and they get a splash in the press, but in reality, I can watch BT Sport on any access.
Well, that's an
method.
interesting thing, because they did know initially, of course, the only way to get BT Sport was effectively to get it from BT. But now, slowly but surely, it's been opened up. Obviously, they own disclosure here. I am an EE subscriber, which means I get a discounted BT Sport. as a result of that, of course, to make it really inconvenient for me, though, I have to stream it to somewhere, and they don't give it to me via my Sky package. So,
if you want to scale the business in many markets, the limited reach of the network, right? So you start now unbundling as well and start selling it as a standalone OTT service, right? Maybe shorter package or smaller packages, right? But also to acquire maybe new customers, and they're also maybe then switching over to your broadband offer or your mobile offer. We see it also a lot on the mobile network operator side, right? You know, adding a video offering to their mobile only services. So, but that I think creates more challenges for the telcos as well, because often it only pays off if you cross subsidize the ARPU through the bundle, to the triple or quad play. And I think then really you could start questioning if a standalone OTT from a telco is profitable or reaches at least certain thresholds.
I guess that's the thing. BT has successfully made a name for itself with BT Sport, but it kind of depends on which sports you like. I guess they've focused in on football, they've focused in on the rugby, they've dallied a little bit in cricket, but I'm not sure if I could tell you what the other sports that the BT Sport show are. But there again, I probably couldn't do that with Sky either. So maybe I'm not keen enough on sports. But do you think they're now getting to the stage where, as we've seen with BT, agreements with Sky, I guess helped along in part by the regulator, but we get into the stage where they say, well, we've got as many customers as we're going to get as a result of being able to show Manchester City versus Liverpool or whatever, and now they're going to say, well, we're going to give you Manchester City versus Liverpool and all the others because we've done this deal with Sky, but you really should do it on us because we've got this whizzy fibre broadband now.
I think telcos fall into this trap of seeing other telcos as their competitors in TV, and actually other telcos are small competitors. The really big competitors are big tech, and telcos have never been good at working together with their direct competitors. If you just look at mobile payments, for example, that was a standard they should have dominated. If you look at something like Internet of Things, is basically a telecom standard. Telcos should have dominated that, but they didn't because they couldn't work together. TV is an area where they have an opportunity to kind of build a consortium, maybe in Europe, maybe in America, and so on, and compete against big tech. Instead, they're looking at their traditional telco competitors as their main competitors, and that's a big mistake they're making.
So are you saying that they should have gotten together and produced Telco Flicks or whatever we wanted to call it, which was
I think
basis?
So they're being priced out of the content market because Amazon's just paid $9 billion for MGM. Nobody could really afford that price, and it's going to continue. So they should build consortia for content, where they all share in the content in the way that they share, say, mobile network masts, and they should build consortia for buying consortia. So BT, Telefonica, Orange, and so on. They get together and they buy the content and they dish it out. Now maybe regulators might have something to say about that, but I really doubt it, given the threat from big tech. And all of the EU regulators, they are fully aware of the threat from big tech. They want national champions in Europe. So I very much doubt that they would stop that happening.
Well, I think that's a valid point. I mean, a couple of years ago, I think a couple of the big telcos tried that, and they were pretty pushed back by the regulator and also customer protection boards and so on and so forth. But I think you have a good point here, because also if you think that through, I mean, the telcos also aggregating this big tech on their platforms, right? So it's not only that they're competing with them one-on-one maybe in the future, but also they having them in channels like Disney or like another studio. The question is really what will happen now if all those studios go on direct, and when they pull out of these relationships, and maybe in the future also Netflix and Amazon saying we are not using the telcos anymore as an aggregator, we're pulling out of these deals as well, right? So you need to have a long-term view, what kind of role you want to play in this market. And back to your point, if they only own 6% of the production market, the question is there room to grow? And with all these acquisitions currently going on, I guess there's not much room to grow right now.
I also think telcos are distracted by other investment opportunities. I mean, TV is one area, but really a lot of them need to focus now on 5G, on cloud, on edge computing, software-defined networks, and maybe cybersecurity. That's where they're putting a lot of their investment. And TV is it's an expensive hobby, if you like, and a lot of people are exiting that market. It's a shame because the TV could be, say, like the control hub for the automated home, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of opportunities that telcos are missing, because the age-old problem, they don't invest enough to dominate a market. They just dabble.
Yeah, and I think with IP, IP technology, the great thing about IP technology is it allows a complete separation of concerns. Because IP is just a transport mechanism. You can transport voice, you can transport email, you can transport video, you can transport IoT information, so you're removed from this constraint where you had to send TV down a DVB pipe 10 years ago. It's the only way you could do it. So telcos were forced to be television companies. But actually, I think what you're saying, Cyrus, is they should concentrate on their core business, which is providing bandwidth, especially down to the last mile.
Yeah, unless they're really willing to invest heavily in a new venture.
And this is interesting because this is what they were saying a little earlier. It's kind of what the cable companies have done. They haven't particularly gone. Obviously, there's always exceptions, which in the States, and I think one of our correspondents in the chat alluded to this. NBC Universal, even though as we've said it, kept apart, but it's still a business. And nobody ever questions the presence of NBC Universal within the Comcast family, because obviously they're doing a good job. Whereas there was always this niggling thing going on almost from the moment the original contract was signed of AT&T's involvement in Warner Media. The questioning was started. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think Comcast is a good benchmark, because on one hand they're investing heavily in the last 2 years in content and acquiring NBC and Sky, but on the other hand they're really good in this whole IoT and in-home arena, where they started. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago they had on average 2 devices in the home. Now on average they have 12.5 devices in the home. So they really start upselling from that TV proposition into dominating more and more services as well. And I think it goes both ways. And they're profitable enough, and they have enough money to invest in both sides of the business. So growing and maturing and have a really great exclusive content for the video TV proposition, but on the other hand, also investing into the networks and into the devices. And that together, I think, is a quite successful proposition.
And let's also remember the real drivers behind, telcos moving outside of their core network business. And those drivers are the stock market. It's, analysts like me who constantly put pressure on telcos and say, you got to get your share price up within your quarterly earnings. And in their core business, which is heavily regulated, their earnings are capped. They're effectively a utility. So if they move out into IT services or into internet TV or to other areas like that, which are less regulated, the chances are they can make more money. So that's the underlying pressure that a CEO in any telco faces. They've got to get their profit margins up and outside of their sort of regulated telecom activity.
So why don't other utility companies suffer from that? I mean, we don't see the electricity company trying to sell us content.
I guess
they do.
No. Move to Norway.
We're content to be a utility.
Okay.
No, but you see more and more utility companies bundling Netflix into their offer, and you get Netflix.
Really?
No, Netflix on us. Pretty much the T-Mobile proposition,
Okay.
and that's been copied heavily in the European utility market, where you get an OTT services on top of your gas and electricity bill or utility bill. Yeah.
I thought I was joking.
No, it's already there. No, it's already there.
It's interesting because Cyrus says about what he looks for from an analyst perspective. As the journalist, you get the press release because it's normally in much more simple language than the full financial statements are. But of course, we all know in the financial report, the front bit is what they want to tell you, the back bit is what they have to tell you. But when you get a press release through, you're looking and seeing what it has to say. But in the case of BT, I noticed a distinct change when Gavin Patterson left as boss and to be replaced by Philip Janssen. And beforehand, you would see regular mentions of BT and BT Sport, BT TV, how many subscribers they've got, what the top match was that season, some wonderful technological development. And BT, we mustn't forget, has done some rather clever innovation in how it presents coverage to viewers, both on screen and the use of various apps. But as soon as Gavin disappeared and Philip came along, all of a sudden it was about the 5G development, the fibre broadband, and and the TV element barely gets a mention. And from that, to me at least, you can see the direction of travel and what is now important to BT. But I think the same argument applies to others. Certainly, if Deutsche Telekom's German statements don't seem to mention the TV much, but you go out into the country, if you like, and Central and Eastern Europe, and there it is. This is a wonderful television service, and it is not as if Magenta is doing a bad job either, as far as I can work out in Germany either.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, the problem is, that once you've got your nice fat broadband pipe, it just sits there working, doesn't it? And the only time you think about it is when it goes wrong. So it's much easier to do your marketing about exciting new content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes the job a lot easier. Well, look, let's talk. We mentioned Telefonica in Spain a little earlier on. What can we think of some telco content success stories which we can, wave the telco adventure and content off to the sunset with? Do we have some highlights here? Oh dear, we don't. This is not good.
I remember very early on in the IPTV days, there was a PCCW in Hong Kong that did an interesting job. And they were pretty successful it's almost like a little bit of a guerrilla marketing activities in wiring all these high rises. So I remember walking into Hong Kong high rises and you saw all these cables hanging around. And so they were pretty much forcing the tenants to use their service. And it was, I think, PCW was, but it's also, I have to see, the geographics allow you, so you put one pipe in the house and you get whatever hundreds of apartments connected.
I mean, it brings to mind, it's a long time ago, is Fastweb, where they cabled up Milan in a similar way, where they basically put a switch in every apartment block, and they got a high-speed fibre loop. And I'm going back 20 years, but the geography, you can do nice demonstrators if the geography is on your side. And I think Cisco sort of bankrolled them a bit, as I don't know this, but I suspect Cisco bankrolled them a bit to demonstrate what could be done with the technology. But yeah, so we found two examples which are historic. That's not very promising, is it?
No, I think we need that that classic series which has been funded by a telco. Which actually I'm struggling to think of any series which has been funded by a telco. It is normally the most expedient route, isn't it? And that invariably means sports rights.
Yeah, but we would, I think, what is the criteria for successful? Is it the amount of subscribers? Is it the network reach? Is it the ARPU?
Well, that's
what are the measures? I mean, you could have a lot of smaller operators. They maybe have only a few 100,000 customers, but they're very successful, right?
I think the only long-term viable measure is profitability.
Yeah, and that goes also to something which you just said. Telcos usually treat this whole TV operations as capex and not as opex, right? So, and you have impact on the EBITDA margin. So you also need to think about what you do with it. And I think if they would take some measures in that regard, it would also allow them to have more room for investment.
I wonder if also I'm thinking back to this used to be said, and this is sound awful actually. I hope there's nobody from CNN with us here. I mean it's the nicest possible way. I remember hearing CNN described as not actually the kind of service that would really make you subscribe to cable, but it would absolutely make you stay. And I wonder if in a roundabout way that is what is happening with the telcos, insofar as no, a TV service is not the deciding factor for broadband. However, if you get a half decent TV service with your broadband, then that's another that provides stickiness, and that's something which isn't necessarily going to be shown in the basic figures, but it might be shown in terms of how many subscribers altogether, and obviously leading, as Cyrus rightly points out, leading to profits either now or down the line.
I think that, sorry, carry on.
Sorry, go, no, Cyrus, please.
I was just going to say, I think that might have been the case 10 years ago, where you bundle services together and TV is one of them, and that helps your stickiness. But I think today we are in a world of unbundling. I mean, Netflix is the most successful internet TV package on the world, and it is an unbundled package. And part of the reason it's successful is it's very cheap. And you only get the content you really want to pay for, whereas most cable TV, satellite TV, or IPTV packages are bundled packages. You don't really want all of it. Like you said, you might just want the CNN bit.
Yeah. And to put an optimistic note in, I think now we really are living in a golden age of content. I mean, I almost feel overwhelmed with the amount of high quality content. I mean, I know the UK maybe this is specific to the UK perhaps, but I think the principle reads across, and the reason that's happening is because tech platforms are doing what they're good at in providing aggregation and commissioning content because they've got scale. Telcos are doing what they're good at, which is providing bandwidth. And because we've got this technical unbundling, commercial unbundling, you can watch almost any content that you can think of. You can get down your phone line or your cable connection into your home, and you don't have to switch providers to watch a particular series or whatever. I think everyone's doing what they should do, what they're best at, and that's making the content availability really good.
I wonder what's happened here is that the streaming services have somehow inadvertently helped the telcos back away from content and help them provide their big pipe for all the reasons, David, that you've just outlined there. If I want to watch a particular series which for some inexplicable reason isn't on Sky or Apple or Netflix or whatever, there's a reasonable chance that between all the services coming into my home, I can buy it. I can relive my childhood of the 1970s if I want to pay £5. I can get a whole series of The Boy from Space. Yeah,
and there is, I mean, there almost any imaginable content is out there somewhere. I mean, we this is just an anecdote, but during lockdown we decided, well, we've never been to an opera, so there is a service that you can subscribe to the Metropolitan Opera in New York for, I don't know, it was about $10 a month, and we just watched all the famous operas. Every Saturday night we did a bit of opera, and that's something we would probably not have done. We wouldn't have gone to see the live opera, but arguably that's niche content. And I'm sure if you're a train spotter, I mean, nothing against train spotters, I'm sure that there are thousands and thousands of hours of material on YouTube, for any particular interest that you can think of. Plus online learning. You can watch many universities put a lot of lectures online. I think there's a project. I can't remember the name of the project now, but it's basically open courseware. So you can essentially go and do a degree online. You won't get the certificate, but you can go and watch all the lectures. So for better or worse, we've got access to almost any imaginable content we could want. Which
it's pointless. So I don't know. If for the sake of argument, if the telcos were trying to get our IPTV off the ground today, the advice would be not to even try, because the content is already out there everywhere. So it's pointless trying to add in anything else to start a new service. You would add a service that you already have, perhaps. And
I was another anecdote. I was setting up a fibre service for my son's student house, and if you've got fibre available to your domestic premises, obviously go for fibre. And I looked through the FAQs. It's sort of a startup provider. I can't remember their name, but the FAQ is, can I get TV through your service? And the answer is yes, of course you can. Install our fibre service and then download the TV apps.
Yeah, I find it interesting. And I think Vodafone have done this. And who is it? It's Salt in Switzerland have done it. You just get an Apple TV box with the
Right.
with the service, and I think Air did it in Ireland actually as well. And their
Some
little version has their apps installed, and you have to hope that the content is good enough on them to watch them instead of getting lost downloading all sorts of other things which you could do.
I think it's also worth making the point, when we look at whether telcos have been successful here, it's worth making the point that regulators have really tilted the field against them by this concept of net neutrality, which is now accepted worldwide as the way to go. And net neutrality obviously is the concept that Netflix should not be penalized when it's sent down a telecom operator's lines. And what that results in is that telecom operators are subsidizing the world's biggest tech companies because, video streaming takes a lot of content. It costs telcos money. But because of net neutrality, because we want the internet to be free, open, and innovative, we have net neutrality rules, and therefore telcos end up subsidizing people a lot more profitable than them on their own lines. So, it's almost a bad thing to say this because accepted practice or politically correct practice is net neutrality is the rule, but this is not a commercially level playing field, and that's something I hope regulators, if they're on the call, can reconsider.
Yeah, and I think this is also, you see that on the difference between mobile and fixed line, right? If you launch on a mobile network, you're much more allowed to do. But the good news is I think there are other certain ways to have a workaround net neutrality because there are peering deals and they're in place to it's like a traffic light, right? So who pays that gets better access to the networks, and their deals in the background in place. They're pretty much under the hood of quality of service. They've been paid by the content providers to the network operators. But you're absolutely right, Cyrus. This net neutrality was right at the time when we started to have broadband over DSL and cable, and everybody should have the same sort of access to the network. But I think it's also the reason why telcos never really invested so much in this whole video and TV landscapes because of the lack of the revenues or the regulated revenues around fixed lines.
Of course, interestingly, IPTV, if you as an ISP are running an IPTV service on your own network, you can prioritize your own IPTV traffic over third-party traffic. But even that advantage didn't really help IPTV services because of the sort of the issue about content rights. And the fact you can't compete in terms of content with Netflix and Amazon and Disney.
I remember in the early days of the BBC iPlayer, somebody got out their calculator and worked out the cost of delivering each show over the internet, where somebody else, the telco, in other words, was paying for it, as opposed to the good old-fashioned transmitter on the hill. And I have to say, the BBC didn't come out too well out of that one. Unfortunately, I suspect there would be similar calculations were we to do it for Netflix, for Disney, or for anybody else. It's kind of like the benefits of 5G of being able to have really super sharp television on any mobile device that you like, and in order to bring it to us, they have to throw off a whole load of television channels off of the UHF spectrum where they've been for years. What we will do now is take the opportunity to go through some of the correspondence that has been appearing in the chat window. If you want to add something yourself, then just go ahead and do so. I'll sort of work my way through the list, and perhaps our panelists would like to chip in if they have anything they like to add. Some, of course, is reacting to our earlier conversations. Frank Aycock, who I've looked at things, is in the United States, says everyone needs a backbone to deliver the content and the platforms. That's the place where the telcos can come into play. The telcos need to take the lead using 5G, wired, and other forms of delivery, or I guess in the case of the States, ATSC 3.0, or going to take over, and then it's going to be very bad for either both the telcos and the big tech if the broadcasters have the backbone. So that's from Frank, and Justin Guild. Hello, Justin. He says, I think most telcos made a pretty bad job of delivering TV in the beginning. Is that true, Annette? There were a few wobbles, but some did a pretty good job in the end.
I think it was at the time in the beginning. It was the question of the bandwidth. You had higher compression rates or lower compression rates. So, and you had only 20 meg DSL or 10. So I think as better the bandwidth got, and as better the compression rate got, as better as the service, and you could add more channels to it, right? But in the beginning, I would say it had all this hiccups, right? But this is more than 15 years ago.
James Fraser says aggregation of content for telcos is key, but also perhaps looking at local content to differentiate from their competitors and trying to serve as much of their audience as possible.
But it's interesting, you know, who's going to be the aggregator of aggregators, because it could be the smart TV vendor, it could be the stick vendor, it could be someone like Amazon who give you essentially an aggregation portal. I suspect, I mean, it used to be called the button one effect, didn't it? You know, in the days of analog TV, it was the whoever was on channel one got a higher rating on their breakfast show because the TV turned on channel one.
That's why you have EPG real estate as such a business.
Indeed. So who's got the default access to the default UI, and if the problem is if telcos want to get access to the default UI, they've got to they probably have to send a physical device or give the user some sort of incentive. I mean, I know I'm trying to think. But Ben Schwartz has just put a comment in, and I'm thinking, was Ben working on DVBI, or am I getting him confused with someone else? Because DVBI is potentially a mechanism where you can direct the default UI experience, but I don't know enough about it to comment further. I don't know if Ben's going to come back and explain it.
Yeah, Ben, if you can help then and added an extra comment, that would be quite good to learn on that. Another Ben, I was going to mention Ben Keane, who I've now, of course, typically lost the message. Here we go. Ben, picking up on something Cyrus said, the buying idea. What was that? That was the buying idea. Should have come to this one quicker. I might have remembered. It was tried by Atrium TV, but didn't work. I'm not quite sure what the buying. You remember, Cyrus, as you mentioned earlier on?
I'm not so sure. Ben, could you remind us what that was?
Sorry, Ben, we've got far too many comments in here. We should have come to some of them a little bit sooner, perhaps.
There's one thing we haven't considered, which is, you know, if you look at the TV industry, about half is pay TV revenues, of which IPT is a part, and half is TV advertising. And, you know, with TV advertising, obviously big tech is invading because they're developing their own TV operating systems where you can target ads to individuals. And people like Sky are trying to copy that kind of thing. But I don't see many telcos doing that. I don't see many telcos developing their own TV operating systems where they can target ads to individual customers watching in the way that Apple TV is almost certainly trying to do. And that's half the industry. That's like $180 billion of money that that is potential revenue.
And that's useful, I guess, particularly if you've got people like HBO Max, and I know there's others who are doing this, of having different tiers. I think Peacock is another one for it in the US, as to whether you if you want the ad version. My partner is forever moaning about the ads. I think she'd moan more if she had to pay more for watch content without the ads. But this is the proposition. And if you are taking a version with ads, then it seems logical to use the technology that's available in order to give an advert that actually might be moderately useful to people.
Yeah, and obviously the dynamics of online advertising are going to change because of increasing pressure on privacy and tracking, and arguably a telco, and again this is not without privacy concerns, but a telco, because they have a billing relationship with you and they know where you live, they've actually got quite a big advantage of being able to target ads without having to do any other form of tracking.
Content buying as a group. That was the topic that Ben has kindly reminded us of, which I can't quite remember Atrium TV, but obviously tried and unfortunately failed. It's a shame. All the best ideas have clearly been taken now. Now, a few more minutes left. If anybody does want to add anything through at the moment. Oh, Justin has mentioned that, and he says it makes. Also, Graham. I'll do Graham first. Graham Leaf. He says that the Apple TV box as an operator box is a good telco move. It makes the service more premium than the content might actually be. I think that's possibly true, Graham. And the customer feels special, and the kids feel big and clever. You know, I think that is true. I think it works at lots of different levels. And,
yeah, in higher ARPU markets.
well, yeah, I guess that's very true. Justin responds by saying it definitely makes sense for smaller operators who would struggle to afford the integration and management costs of an Android set-top box. And Leonard Brewers adds that, not really just Apple TV, but any consumer device capable of streaming 4K video makes sense to use. You bring your own device TV as an app, right? He says, which I think is very very true, because I wonder, we often, and it's possibly another conversation for another day, death of the set-top box, been done before. However, maybe it's the death of the set-top box that the operator gives you.
I think you see the success already from Android operated tier, right? That is pretty much bringing the cost from the device down to 35, 55 euros. And you can even launch a managed service and add some more apps to it. So you control still the billing relationship, but you not have the heavy lifting to do than maybe 2-3 years ago.
An interesting one from, I'm apologising in advance because I suspect I'm going to get the name pronounced badly. Tigis Kabeda. That's probably very wild of the mark, but a good question. What can the telcos in the emerging markets in Africa and Asia learn from the experience of the mature market? I'm tempted to say don't do it, but our panelists probably have some better advice for emerging markets for telcos.
So obviously, one of the things we've seen in Africa in telephony is that they've managed to completely skip the wired generation and go straight to mobile. So what I have maybe not have an answer, but what if you were in a less mature market, would you skip? What phases of technology? Especially, I guess you could skip copper loop, certainly.
It is a good example, I would say, with MultiChoice in South Africa, who has a really different markets where they play, and they have higher ARPU markets and very low ARPU markets, and they have given, I think, a couple of years ago, the first receiver, so that was a DVB-T, right, or DVP, a receiver called a walker. You can walk around and watch television. It was quite interesting, but they have really adjusted to all of these markets and bring in the right device and the right proposition, and I think that's some of the advice. But I think I also agree, you would not run any copper wire anymore. You would go probably mobile direct.
I'd advise them to speak to the regulator and convince them to abandon net neutrality, so you can charge the likes of Netflix for using your network.
Mind you, isn't that where don't you then end up with something like Facebook Basics, Internet Basics, where you've got the internet, but you can only access Facebook.
You can have the car of any colour you like, as long as it's as long as it's black. As Mr. Ford once said. Back to Graham, who says actually the Apple TV as an operator box is 3 times more expensive than an Android box. As an Apple user, I can well believe that stat. And he also said, Annette, you are right about high ARPU markets, which I guess that goes with the previous comment there. Benjamin Benchfort says, could telcos have been relatively successful, but if linear TV is slowly dying, then it feels unsuccessful, and people lose interest. David, what do you think to that? I think it kind of makes sense, really, doesn't it? That
yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
kind of halo effect in reverse, almost.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, then it's a debate about linear TV versus on demand. Because clearly, you know, in terms of the industry at the moment is doing very well because there's so much content, but most of the content is on demand content. So the things you watch live, sport, maybe news never seems to be a huge commercial driver, does it? Apart from your point about CNN. But
it's interesting whenever there's a major breaking news story, of course, all the commercial news channels are forced to pull their ads because they need to stick with the story, which is kind of counterintuitive.
But I'm sure you're right to say you're right to say that no one bought a subscription package because it had a news channel on it, you know. And I guess the problem that the telcos have got is that a lot of their marketing has been about those, you know, really high profile things you do watch live, which are linear TV. But actually they've sort of been overtaken by a wave of on-demand content that comes from places like Netflix, Amazon, Disney. So maybe telcos are bet on a sector of the TV industry which is in decline.
And I think that's the point. You know, if linear TV is in decline, then telcos need to invest in the areas that are on the up, which is essentially building their own set-top box, their own TV operating system.
Patrick Khan makes a good observation. Some Asian telcos are much more advanced than European telcos.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Okay, right. I think we are probably out of questions at this point. Really good to see the response of all of this, and I hope really that our panelists, and in particular those of you watching from your homes, your offices, or maybe a park bench somewhere, have enjoyed the conversation as well. It's good to do something a little bit different, to really take the long view on a particular industry topic. So I will thank our panelists, I think, at this point, to Cyrus, Annette, and David. Thank you very much for taking part. Hang around, though, the deal room platform. You can hop out of this particular session and maybe see what else is going on, and you might even bump into an old friend who you might normally see in Amsterdam or somewhere else. Keep an eye on your email box, because we'll be letting you know about more events coming up from media meet and greet. And don't already have a subscription to Broadband TV News. We'll tell you what's happening every day as well. Thank you all very much for taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian, for leading this panel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.